Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Amaka Festival, Day 2. My name is Anita Daru. I am a media personality based in Nairobi, Kenya, who has been doing this for the last 10 years. And I am the host of a show called The Overdressed Cook, which is a web series that's on IGTV and YouTube. And today I am joined by amazing women as we continue with the Owl Summit. And as you know, Amaka is a newly launched digital media publisher that presents diverse and nuanced stories for women from Africa and across the diaspora, providing a platform that highlights and maintains the diversity, dynamism, and the vigor of Pan-African womanhood. Now, our guest today will be discussing the balancing act of entrepreneurship and parenthood, and we would love for you to join us. And I would love to know where it is that you're watching us from, and I would love for you to use the hashtag Ababot Festival so that you could be able to reach us as well as at amaka.studio on all social media platforms. All right. And there's also a giveaway taking place. So be sure to check out amaka.studio on Instagram as well to find out how you can take part. Now, I would love to thank our sponsors, and that is Vista Bank and Motivation Monday, which is graciously sponsored by Oakwood Green. Now, the balancing act is what we'll be discussing today. We'll explore the importance of work life balance, managing the health and well being, and why women do not have to sacrifice parenthood to be successful entrepreneurs and businesswomen. This hour long panel discussion serves to offer guidance and encouragement to those who are looking to build a successful career and a loving family at the same time. Now, I would love to introduce you to my panelists today, amazing women who will be discussing this topic with us. So first up, we have Fioyolani Yan, who is a London-based Nigerian entrepreneur and is the co-owner of fashion brands Burgers Lounge and VL The Label. ASOS's best-selling occasion wear brands collectively having over 110,000 followers on Instagram. Lani Yan is also the owner of Era Fashion Agency, which will be an agency for Black-owned businesses due to launch this year. Welcome onto the panel, hon. Then we have Yvette Gale, who is a highly respected former executive of the music industry with over 20 years of experience working for companies such as Sony, Universal, and Interscope Different Records, among others. She currently serves as the COO for Africa Creative Agency, a pan-African talent and digital marketing agency. And then we also have Ivy Mugo, who is a Kenyan vlogger, a TEDx speaker, and YouTube personality, famously known as being a member of the Over 25 YouTube channel. Welcome, ladies. Good afternoon.
Hi.
All right. Hi.
Hi.
So I think we can all mute at this point.
Yes.
I mean, rather unmute. Sorry. I was like, hello, hi, hello. Am I the only one here? So welcome today to the Amaka Hour Long Summit. And I'm excited to have you all on board. Please tell me which part of the world you are joining us from.
Well, I'm in Johannesburg. Sorry. Okay. I'm in very dull, cloudy London. And I'm in Nairobi, Kenya.
Me too. Welcome. So, as you know, today we will be discussing the balancing act on entrepreneurship and parenthood. So, how this is going to go is I will ask you different questions based on the topic, after which we're going to have a Q&A session. And what we really want is at the end of this panel discussion for the audience to get actionable tools on how to start a business during a pandemic and how to manage a business postpartum. So, welcome. Good afternoon, and I will get right into it. If there's any particular question you would like to be the one to answer, all you have to do is raise your hand in the private chat, and I'll be sure to direct the question to you. But for now, I think I can start with each and every one of you because we would love to know more about you aside from the introduction that I have just given. So why don't we start with you, Yvette, and you could tell us about your company and how you got started.
Sure. The name of my company is Africa Creative Agency. I run it with my husband, Colin Gale, and I have 3 other partners. And likewise, I have a second, I seem to become a serial entrepreneur these days. I have a luxury candle and soap business, 7 years old this year. And so I've been doing the balancing act of trying to run 2 entrepreneurial ventures. My background is music PR. I worked assisting and helping R&B and hip hop break into mainstream in the early 90s, working with artists like Mariah Carey and Nas, the Fugees, and Maxwell. And then I spent 17 years heading the urban publicity department at Interscope Geffen A&M, working with 50 Cent again, and Mary J. Blige, and Carrie Hilson, and Timbaland, and a ton of amazing artists. In 2017, I decided to leave the music industry, at least inside the label part, and branch out with my husband and move to South Africa to kind of continue the work he had been doing over the last 15 years, trying to bridge the gap between Africa creatives and musicians with North America and the UK. So we represent actors, musicians, comedians in trying to broaden the horizons of folks out of their home territory across the rest of the continent, and then on to the UK and North America.
All right, fantastic. Very, very impressive. And then next up, we have Kyoye Lanian. Could you tell us a little bit more about your company and how you got started?
Okay, so Verga's Lounge, which is an occasion wear brand, started off in 2009. When myself and my sister were in uni, respectively, different years, but we're in uni, and we needed summer jobs and we couldn't find any in London. And we decided to start selling vintage dresses. From there, we would travel on the train to Hull, which is like a very remote part of the UK, to buy vintage dresses. And we found that there was a demand for the product, but because they're vintage, we couldn't have them in multiple sizes or colors and things that people wanted. So we decided to go into manufacturing dresses, occasion wear dresses, and that's how the brand took off. We've been in Topshop before everything happened with Topshop. We've been on ASOS for about 10 years now, on Zalando and Amazon. And the brand has really just grown from strength to strength, from a business that literally started in our living room with very little ideas, but we took it on full on. And then over the last 10 years, we have made really great achievements. We've had really great achievements, but we've also had really big lessons. And that was the idea behind starting up the sales agency, which is called Era Fashion and Lifestyle Agency. So we represent brands across the board, from fashion to lifestyle to home to beauty. And we try to scale them up and sell them into retailers that they would normally not be able to feel like they can get into, and educating them about the business of fashion, mainly based on the mistakes that we've made in the past. It could be things about how to mark up your product. A lot of people don't know that this is the right way to mark up your products for wholesale to be able to be profitable. And that was because we didn't know that, and we had to learn things the hard way. And for me, it's about mentorship and guidance for a lot of the brands who are up and coming and some who are already established. So that's pretty much the basis of what the agency is.
All right, fantastic. And then up next, we have Ivy. Do you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your company, and how you got started? Ivy, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Sorry, I was in mute.
Yes, we can hear you now. No worries.
I was saying thank you, Anita. I feel quite honored coming after Gail and Fiore. It looks like I'm on a panel with women that are going to be my new role models, because my journey is a bit different. I'm in the business of content creation and maybe conversation curation, which is mainly the YouTube business. The company I'm representing today is one that I own with 3 of my closest friends, over 25. That's our registered business. We started it 5 years ago. We're celebrating our 5th birthday on the 31st of May. And the reason we started, imagine that. The reason we started was a friend of mine came back from the UK, and she said in the UK, everybody used to have a camera or a phone in front of them, and they would just talk and vlog and discuss their experiences and share their experiences. But when she came back to Kenya, she was doing her master's. When she came back to Kenya, she saw that absolutely nobody was doing that, and YouTube was completely untapped at the time. And she asked 3 of her friends, would you guys join us? Only because if I get cyberbullied, at least I have cushion in my friends. And thus, Over 25 was born 5 years ago. And I did this while in employment, and I only recently left employment in October last year. COVID had something to do with it. When you start getting half pay, for example, you need to hustle and figure out how you're going to feed your children and maintain their lifestyle. So I took on my side hustle, which was now social media marketing and amplification. And I've been doing that now. If October last year was now, I think 6 months, self-employed. I'm also in travel business. I don't talk about it very much because it's a nice little business that I'm trying to grow. But I believe that is basically my background. Yeah.
All right, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate you sharing your story and your journey with us. So we're going to get into the list of questions now. So if you want to be the one to start, all you have to do is just say, I'll go first, and we'll go with you. So what inspired you to start your own company, and what gap did you notice in your field? Who would like to go first? Okay,
yeah. All right.
I'm not getting the volunteers. I'll just be like, okay.
All right. I think I've actually shared this story. Yeah, we realized that there was Kenyan YouTuber. There was nothing like Kenyan YouTubers at the time. It was comedians or news anchors or the likes of Anita and Deru. People in above the line media were the ones who were really owning the digital and the marketing spaces. So we saw that gap, and the other thing we saw is the conversations that were happening online were not very relatable. We couldn't really connect with them. They were very newsy, very out there. So as 4 friends, we decided to the conversations we have as women while we are in a room together, we decided to put a camera in front of us and share. And we were completely surprised by the response that we received, because very many people would say, wow, guys, this is stuff we discuss in closed rooms. You're very bold to put a camera in front of yourselves and talk about it, and we appreciate that. So bold conversations from women were not happening, and Over 25 decided to fill that gap.
Okay, great. So then Ian, you'd already told us it was as a result of especially the vintage fashion brand, was as a result of wanting the product and the product not being available. Would you like to add anything else to that?
So basically, for the fashion brand itself, it was a journey of learning different things as we went along. So we didn't have a plan per se. When we first started the brand, it was just about statement dresses, events, wearing things that we didn't really hold back on design or colors. We just went out there. We had no knowledge, which sounds crazy to me now, of the seasons like spring, summer, and autumn, winter. We just did whatever we felt people wanted to wear. And I think that was what was so refreshing at the time. Obviously, with being stocked on such big retailers, you would have to be more in trend with the seasons and colors, but still always add our own injection. And one unwritten, unspoken rule of the brand is we always want people to know this is a Virgo's Lounge dress, this is a available dress, without anybody even asking. And that's something that we've carried with us, sometimes unknowingly, and sometimes we're really intentional about it. And the agency started in October last year, where we've taken on about 6 brands now. One of the brands we've been able to place on ASOS, a couple of the brands we've been able to sell into TK Maxx in the UK, and a couple more to a buyer in Dubai called Namshi, and they're like the biggest retailer in the UAE, sort of the equivalent of ASOS in the UAE. Okay. So that's what we've been able to achieve in the 3 months that we've been in 4 months that we've been working actively on the agency. So that's what we do. And seeing a need for brands to be more exposed, it should be less about connections and more about the talent of the brand. That's the motive for the agency.
Okay, great. So I want to know, what was a turning point in your career?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
Yes, I was.
Okay,
I was just,
sorry.
I was,
I think the turning point in my career was the fact that my husband was an entrepreneur, and I never really wanted to be one. I liked working for corporate. I liked having that paycheck every other Friday and knowing exactly what was coming in and what was going out. And I want to say around early, my husband came to the continent in '98 to produce Nelson Mandela's 80th birthday. So he brought Stevie Wonder and Kenny Lattimore and a bunch of other artists to come down to South Africa. And that was his first entrance and foray to the continent. And from then, he had just been visiting and building, starting out in production, starting out at writing strat for companies and corporations that wanted to do business in Africa. We had a couple of different companies before Africa Creative Agency, which culminated in all these content production, management, artist representation. And I think somewhere around 2015, 2016, I started thinking what was going to be next for me. I kind of had reached kind of the height of what I was doing in PR in the music industry. In 2013, I launched my candle company, which was kind of like an ode to my daughter who I adopted from Ethiopia. And my son convinced me to just start making my candles and selling them to the world. And so I started my first entrepreneurial project then, and sold very well in the US and in Nigeria, and have now expanded that and brought it to South Africa. But really, the love for the continent, the excitement of finding new talent and extremely talented individuals here just sparked something in me that said, it's time to go and it's time to put boots on the ground. Our agency is a little similar in the US. We have agencies like CAA or William Morris that are kind of like agencies that will represent the musician and the actor and the director and the photographer or what have you. And we noticed that that was missing on the continent, that there weren't these very established, very experienced music managers or managers across the board kind of like that. And so we kind of came and put all our eggs in one basket to say, let's make this work. We started focusing on talent that we knew was exportable, out of either South Africa or East Africa or West Africa or wherever the artist belongs or resides, and how to grow them. So currently we work with actresses like Pearl Tuzi, Inama Kamada. I have Nasty C and Sauti Soul from Kenya. So in the last, 4 or 5 years, we've really been able to develop and create a holistic brand management company. We specialize in the human brands and trying to figure out what lanes and avenues these artists might have outside of what they're known for. So for instance, Nasty C, he's a rapper, but he's also an artist and also is writing a book and also wants to have a clothing line. And so we try to help develop businesses with our talent to kind of stretch them beyond, one area.
That's incredible. I'm sure pretty much everybody on this panel, as well as our audience who are tuning in, know most of the people you've mentioned, and that's incredibly impressive. And if you're just tuning in, this is the Our World Summit Day 2 by Amaka, and it's been sponsored by Vista Bank, and Motivation Monday is graciously sponsored by Oakwood Green. So I'll get back into the questions. Ivy, I would like to know, how does emotional intelligence factor into your business decision?
Wow. I think what I can say to that is we've learned a lot, especially in the company, how to self-regulate, meaning regulate our own emotions, regulate our own egos. And in doing that, we have managed to do the same when we're making our business decisions. So we basically go into every room extremely hungry and extremely humble. And we recognize that we're only there to learn. And even if we lose out on a business venture or on a deal, we know that at least we'd have come out having learned something. So I think that is what I can say in terms of how EQ has come to play when we're making our business decisions. We just know, stay humble, stay hungry, manage someone's ego. Everyone is going through something. You never know the type of problems that someone is going through. So just manage your ego and stay humble.
I absolutely love that. Stay hungry and stay humble. What about you, Fiore?
So
what would you say? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go.
I think emotional intelligence for me is something that I've had to learn over the years, given that the business of fashion is not something that I studied or really understood the techniques or what went on behind the scenes. Kind of had to learn everything on the go. I think there are a lot of things that are stressors that you cannot do anything about. And I think the last year, especially for occasion when, for the sort of business we do, with there being absolutely no occasions, we've had to quickly pivot in a way that we did not even expect. And one thing that we learned is that, one thing that I learned personally is that the stressors I can do absolutely nothing about. And those are things that I say, okay, this is probably a learning moment. And it sounds very zen when you're in the midst of it. It probably doesn't work that way. But over the years, I've learned to slow down and just reflect back on why this has happened, what I could have done better if I had control over it, and what I couldn't. So I'm not the same person I was when I started the business, where if something didn't go my way, I was having complete meltdowns about it. Now it's okay, it's a stressor. I can't do anything about it, but I can do something about this. I can do something about X, Y, and Z. So, and I think it also comes with being a parent as well, where your children do certain, I think you see the eyes of the world differently when you have children in terms of being more compassionate about things. And like Ivy said, you just don't know what people are going through, why they do certain things. That has helped me develop my intelligence to be able to converse, communicate with other people, and just be more tolerant in an industry where maybe you have a lot of deadlines. So you have spring, summer, and autumn, winter, and buyers are like, oh, we need this now and we need that now. And your goods are stuck at the ports for 1 month. And there's nothing you can do about it. Well, okay, apart from one time when I literally screamed down the phone to who I needed to get stuff from. And but 9 out of 10 times there isn't a lot you can do about certain situations, especially in this industry. If you have a cancellation for an order, you just kind of have to deal with it and find alternatives to growing your business. And I've found that a lot of times, just because of my perspective on things, I find that even though things don't work out the way I wanted it to, it always works out for the better in ways that I did not expect. So that's, for me, is how emotional intelligence is such an important aspect of the business. And also,
okay. All right. Lastly, Yvette, we're into you now.
I think for me, I've had an incredible learning curve over the last 3 to 4 years. And when I think about it, not only did I decide to leave the cushion of my job, but I decided to move to a new continent, which brought a whole other dynamic to everything, to parenting and getting my children used to being in school here, and the differences and challenges that presented, and just coming and having to learn and create a whole new ecosystem. I think for me, I had to slow myself down and absorb everything around me and really open my eyes and listen and learn in the community in which now I was growing and thriving and wanting to be a part of. I think North America, New York and LA, we're like we're like very, very fast paced. We're like, get the job done. We need it done now. And I had to adapt and say, I'm no longer in New York City. I am in South Africa, and I'm dealing with South Africa and East Africa, and the culture of business may be a little bit different in how fast paced we move. And I'm also trying to bring some of the global best practices to business here. And so that has been a little bit challenging. I think I've had to check myself and say, slow down, and realize there are things that I cannot change and cannot change immediately. But trying to work with my artists and clients and companies to really build this ecosystem that we know works. And we know that will help build longevity for careers. And that's kind of what our focus is. So for me, yeah, it's been a learning curve. There's a lot that I've had to just pivot, like you said. That's my favorite word these days. And I've also had to relax and say, okay, this has happened. There's nothing that I can do about it. And let's just move on and figure out how we manage. Because load shedding was something that I was not prepared for.
So this next one is, how has your age played a role in your career, especially working in African settings, for those of you who have to work in Africa? And I, for one, began formal employment when I was 21 years old. And I remember every time I'd walk into a boardroom, it's almost like you'd feel the judgment, especially when you've come in there with so much confidence and you have all this ambition and you have so much you want to ask for and, put on the table. And then there's something about your age being viewed as, well, if you're this young, you cannot possibly have that much experience. And I don't know how it is elsewhere, but I think, Ivy, you can relate to this. That's especially in Kenya, I'd say, whenever you go to apply for a job, they expect you to have a certain number of years of experience for you to apply for a particular job. So if you're fresh out of university and you're told they want 8 years of experience, you're kind of left wondering at what point you were supposed to have gotten this experience when you were in school. So so I would love to know how your age has played a role in your career. Ivy, do you take this first?
Sure. I think I was lucky enough, or I don't know if I can call it luck, to be, when my career was starting out, to be the youngest person in almost every boardroom I walked into. And by luck, I mean that I have learned that being put in rooms that I never would have been in, just because I was being trained, because I was the intern, because I'm the one to take the notes. I've come to realize now, while I'm 32, that 22-year-old Ivy was extremely, extremely lucky. And 22-year-old Ivy would be quiet in boardrooms and listen and learn, but then 24-year-old Ivy would learn to speak a bit more. So I started being trained in these matters from a very, very early age. And what I learned as 23, 24-year-old Ivy was, and this is something I say all the time to my followers on social media everywhere, is if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. I was lucky enough to be put among people who are willing to teach. And the young ones are the ones that are extremely, extremely teachable. I was a fresh canvas. I knew not about marketing. I did not know anything about billboards or creating a TV ad. But what people could see is that I was willing to learn. So being young and being in teachable rooms with teachable people, for me, I think really, really helped propel my career, because I feel right now, the mentorship I received, I'm paying it forward.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Yvette, do you want to go before Lanian, or Lanian, do you want to go before Yvette?
Sure.
Either way.
I will say I was very, very young when I started in the music business. I got a temp job as a receptionist while I was in college at Sony Music, and kept moving up and moving up. And here I'm now going to I think enter my 26th or 27th year in the business. So I'm no longer young, but I'm not old. I think that kind of like what Ivy said is I soaked everything up. And I had great mentors and great teachers who taught me the business. But even when people weren't teaching me, I was teaching myself by reading everything. You know, I always tell young people that I mentor, no matter what business you're in and no matter what they're making you do, whether it's 100 Xerox copies or stuff that you feel is meaningless, there's a meaning behind it. Read everything you copy. That's how you gain knowledge. That's how I gained knowledge of the publicity game, by reading everyone's reports that I had to copy and then distribute throughout the whole company. So I think that every second and every moment along the journey, at whatever age you are, is a teaching and learning moment. And even where I am today, I'm learning lessons every day still. I'm learning from my employees and my staff. I'm listening to them. I by no means say, you know what, I've been doing it this long, I know everything or whatever, because so much has changed. Do you know what I mean? Like when I started out in publicity, there was no social media, there was no digital media. And so I've had to adapt and pivot. And you know, for right now, yeah, I'm going to be 50. I'm no longer really out in the club and out with ear to the street, but I have a team and a staff, and I send them out and they come back and report. And, you know, I make sure that I listen to them a lot because they are on the ground and they know what's changing. Yeah, that's kind of how I deal with the age aspect.
Good. I am learning a lot here today. Okay, Linnea, you're up next.
Okay, so for me, the age discussion has two facets for me, which is more of a personal situation where from a very young age, I watched my mother work hard for everything that she basically has. My father passed away when I was really young. So I noticed that she worked really, really hard. And my first proper job out of uni, when I finished my master's, I was working as an HR assistant, but I was pretty much just doing everything, getting the coffee, getting the Starbucks, doing the HR work. And I would go home to my mom and I would say, I don't really know if I'm learning anything HR related. And she just told me, you stoop to conquer. That is that's a phrase that I would never really forget, because she said, sometimes you have to do the things that you don't necessarily feel like it's your path, or is in the path of your line of work. And it just bounces off what Yvette said about everything is a learning process. And when I look back at the relationship I had with my boss in the past when I was working in HR, I think it was probably outside of what I learned from my mother, who's an amazing businesswoman. I learned so much from this woman who showed me the ropes in running a startup business, HR, everything that goes into it. And she taught me how to be fearless and not be afraid of anyone. And I felt that if at the moment when I felt, oh, I've done my degree, I've done my master's, you know how, you know, in an African household, particularly in Nigeria, where I come from, education is everything. Like, you can be a professional student and you can get chieftaincy title in your village. So, you know, and I felt, no, I've done my master's, I went to LSE, I should not be getting the coffee, I should not be doing, and my mom just told me that. I was like, okay, you know, you need to come back down to earth and find a way to enjoy the things that you do. Of course, if it's not good for your mental health or your physical health, then you need to know where to draw the line. And then the other age aspect of things. So just going back, I've never really felt like, oh, I'm too old or I'm too young to do certain things, just because I've just thrown myself in the deep end of whatever it is I wanted to do. And I don't think that anybody's too old for anything. As long as you're living, you still have countless opportunities to do whatever it is you set your mind to. And I wholeheartedly believe in that. And then on the other side, being in fashion, age is such an important aspect, because now fashion is younger, is faster. And I'm not like, you know, like Yvette said, in the clubs or wearing, you know, backless dresses. And so, you're always looking to social media, always looking to people who are younger than you. So communication with all age groups is essential to sort of dispelling any issues that come about age, basically. So yeah, that's it for me.
Okay. So now I'm going to switch it up a little bit, and we're going to get into the parenthood aspect of being an entrepreneur. So my question to each of you is, what are your thoughts on the question, how do you manage parenthood and your work life? Yvette?
I feel like I don't manage it very well. I'm still learning every single day and putting strategies in place. And I cannot believe how I can strategize campaigns and my artists and tours and whatever, and I can't get home together. It's really difficult. It's not like when I worked for corporate and I went out to work and I came home and I turned the phone off, and from 6 o'clock on was just family time, dinner and bath and kids and fun and whatever. I was able to do that when I worked for someone else. And working for myself means that I am kind of on all the time. So my kids, unfortunately, they have no concept of mommy or daddy is on the phone and I should be quiet or wait till they finish. They just walk right up and start talking to us, because there seems to be no balance and there seems to be no place where I draw the line. And because I'm working on so many different time zones, South Africa, the UK, and the US, my mornings will start really, really early to try to catch some people up in another time zone. And I find myself working all through the day, and then North America wants to start having conference calls and Zooms at 9 p.m. South Africa time. It's like, whoa. So that has been really challenging for me, because I feel like we are a new business and gathering new business, and we have to give it our all, and there's so much. But I am fortunate enough that when I get to the point where I'm like, okay, the kids are starved a little bit and we're starved for family time, we are just going to stop. And like a couple of weeks ago, we had to go to Cape Town for work. Because my kids are now homeschooled, we were like, you know what? We're all going to Cape Town for 3 weeks. And my husband and I continue to do work, but we also got to do really, really great things with the kids and go bike riding and go to the beach and just plan a little bit more. So as much as I'm hard on myself on the day-to-day, I do take the time eventually when my 10-year-old comes to me and says, this is not working. She's too smart. And she's like, we need to go out to dinner. We need to go to the movie. We do make that time. Or we make it very late in the evening. So I was having a conversation earlier this week with someone who was like, oh, their kids are in bed, by normal hours, like 7:30, 8:30. And I'm like, wow, my kids are in bed like 10:30 and 11, but they're homeschooled and don't start school till 10 o'clock. Late in the evenings, about 9 or 9:30 is when we kind of quiet down a little bit and we can watch that movie or we can watch that film. So I've had to do what works for me and what works for my family. And the kids, they do get enough sleep. They're getting excellent grades. And we just somehow try to make it work. They're very understanding when mommy and daddy have to work. And then I try to be understanding and delegate more to my team who can handle things as opposed to me handling everything, and say, hey, okay, let's go out and take a trip or go ride around or ride a bike or something like that. So I have to, it's hard for me, but I have to force myself and be conscious to give myself that mental break also, because if I don't, it's very hard to just go. I'm very bad. Like when I sit down and I settle, I'm like, I'm supposed to be doing something, and I get up and I find something to do. So self-management is where I feel like I need the most work. And it's hard. It's I can't even lie. It's a difficult thing, but it's not something that I would trade in the world, because I'm hoping that I'm building something. I'm building a legacy for my kids. And one day they're going to say, oh, this is why mom and dad, worked so hard and whatnot.
All right. what I feel is, to some extent, men don't often get asked this question. They don't get asked, how are you able to balance being a businessman and being a father as well? Which is, it seems to be a question that it's the mothers who often get asked. So Ivy, how do you manage parenthood and your work life? And what's your take on sort of the bias behind women being viewed as the ones who might be incapable of balancing the work life and parenthood versus the men?
Okay, so I used to be. So my kids right now, they actually turned 4 years old last week
Oh,
on
happy
Friday.
birthday.
Thank you. And it was at that juncture I realized that I have been very, very hard on myself as a mother for the past 4 years, and that is because I used to try and do too much, or in other words, do big chunks of things, or try and make big impact, or move big mountains for my children and for myself in my career. Whereas I came to learn for myself, the method that works best for me is the little things. So how I manage that is, for example, when it comes to work, I have my 60-second rule, where if it's going to take me 60 seconds to do it, I'll do it. And I do the same thing with my children. If it means I'm going to have 2 minutes alone with one baby, uninterrupted, I will take those 2 minutes. And those 2 minutes in that day are going to be enough for Ivy, and they're going to be enough for that baby. As opposed to me saying, oh my God, I was supposed to take them for a date. We've not gone swimming. We've not gone shopping. No. Nowadays, the biggest way for me to manage and balance parenthood and career is to really maximize on the little things. And to answer your second question on how I feel about the bias between men and women, I really encourage parents, because the way I deal with it is, for example, if the father does something that he is expected to do because he is the father, I don't say thank you. I don't over glorify it, because I am not thanked for feeding the baby. I am not thanked for bathing the baby. It is my job. It is what you're supposed to do. Same thing at work. If you have a report to submit, your boss will not thank you and say, it is the job. You are supposed to submit the report, and you're supposed to submit it on time. So I never thank him. Of course, we give each other pats on the back, but we do not over glorify parenting, because it is the work.
I absolutely love that. I'll be sure to use that in the future. I guarantee you that much. Okay.
Try it.
For me, I feel like I'm not offended by when people ask that question, or how do you do it? Because I feel like the whole journey of parenthood is so unique to each and every individual. I think the first thing is to strip yourself of comparing yourself to anyone who seems to get it right, or who seems to have it all planned out, or who seems to take their child swimming every weekend and you don't. The pandemic really, really stressed me out, because I felt that how am I going to cope with two children, one being 4 at the time and one being 2? And it was, I don't take advantage the amazing support I get from my husband in terms of, getting things done, full stop, without it being a thing, like applauding a fish for swimming. That's what it's meant to do. So, we get on with it. We realize that not everything is going to work out the way we plan for it to. But as long as the girls are happy, as long as they're fulfilled, as long as they're satisfied, as long as at the end of the day we can all sit down and say, "Oh, that was a good day. Started off crazy, but that was a good day." And no 2 days are the same, obviously, as everyone knows, because your children would humble you in ways that you do not expect. But I find that just finding fulfillment in the small things, in my daughter said something, she's 2, and she said, "Mommy, I want to go home," the other day. And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, we've never really heard her speak so clearly And we just really soaked that moment in because it was something that we had never heard before. And, you know, you would get stressed one day and you'd be really happy the next day. But at the end of the day, it's just about calming down, because there's some things that we don't want our children to inherit, like not being able to manage stress and not being able to deal with other people and constantly being confused about certain things. It's about not sweating the small stuff, for me anyway, and just getting on with life in the most enjoyable way possible.
I love all the gems that we're picking up in this conversation. Thank you so much, ladies. So now you mentioned the pandemic and how having to stay at home has changed how your daily routine was like. So how has it affected your routine as an entrepreneur? And what tips would you give to everybody who's either starting a business or running a business as an entrepreneur during the pandemic?
Okay, so for me, anyone who wants to start a business, I would say start. Just start something, start your research. Doesn't mean that you have to register your business, but start something. One thing that I always say is a big regret for me starting a business in an industry where I had no knowledge or experience is probably not having a mentor. I think mentorship is such an important thing for business owners, especially for people who are going into an area of business where they don't have any experience. I always look for people who have failed in business first and maybe made something out of that failure, because from their mistakes, you can actually learn things. And that's been the strategy behind running the agency, which has been very, very important for me to ensure that I offer a safe space for any of the brands that we take on to talk about things, to mull over things, to really look at the details of the numbers. Because, you know, you can get an order from a big brand and think, oh my God, this is amazing. But like I read today, not all business deals are necessarily serve you or are profitable for you. So it's about that mentorship, and also for me, taking time out of my day to do something that I absolutely want to do without any child, any husband in my way, because that's why I said you guys are in my way. You know, be it taking a walk, going to the gym, just sitting in my room and doing absolutely nothing, are the things that I feel just put me in a good mental space. And you need a good mental space when you're on the phone and your daughter comes in and she's just talking, to know how to react to her. Because if you're stressed, then your reaction is going to be a stressed one. And that's something that I've had to learn over time, where, okay, if she comes to me, I can tell the person to hold on and just explain to her that I'm on the phone, I can't deal with this now, as opposed to saying, are you serious? You know, like, it just, you learn as you go along. And for anyone who wants to start a business, start it, talk to people, get a mentor or a consultant that could help you along the way if you can afford it. If you can't, then there are lots of resources online, depending on what industry you're going into. But I'm always on hand to offer advice to anyone who's going into the fashion industry. It's such a volatile industry, and I'm always there to shout, you know, that I'm here to help if anyone's ever interested in that.
All right, that's fantastic. To all the audience members, if you're interested in fashion, at least now you know. Lanian, what is your social media handle?
It's Fioye Lanion, so Fioye
Okay.
Lanion. So my full name, just no spaces.
Okay, fantastic. So that way the audience members would know where to find you. So
Amazing.
Ivy, what would your advice be to mothers who want to start businesses or just during the pandemic, and how everything pretty much changed from how the world operated before?
Thank you, Anita. What I've noticed, the biggest difference that I've seen during the pandemic when it comes to businesses, boundaries that are really being pushed. There are no boundaries. I'm in the business of content creation, so I can be on my phone responding to DMs at midnight, and at the same time, I'm also trying to put a baby back to sleep or something like that. So I would advise people to just be very clear on their boundaries. When you left an office, because right now we're working from home, you could leave the office at 5 p.m. and say, I'm not picking up any calls, I'm not responding to any emails. But now working from home, you wake up at maybe later than usual. For me, boundaries have really been pushed. So that's really something that I'm trying to work with now. I'd also tell people who want to start a business now to just to be easy on themselves in case it doesn't really work, or in case we're living through a pandemic. It's a hard time. This is not the time to put a weight of pressure on your shoulders. It's a very, very hard time. So I would ask you, take it easy on yourself, dear mom. It's hard for everybody. So just take it easy. Be easy on your mental health. Children are also quite affected in the home. My kids are really, really suffering from cabin fever. They can't stand it. So they themselves are transitioning through this period. That's why I'm just asking any mother who's watching this to just be easy on yourself. I left employment in a pandemic like last year, and I put down my projections for, okay, this is the financial year for the clients I want to work with, and this is what I want to do, and I'm ready. But it was a pandemic, and everybody was shifting how they were doing things, so it didn't really give me room. You can't really project based on a COVID year, so you really just have to be easy with yourself and adapt, change, move. The best thing about the digital space is it moves and changes so quickly, you can do the same. So that's the advice I would give. Obviously, if you have the idea to start a business, as Fiore had advised us, just do it. If you started when it's perfect, you probably started too late.
Okay, great. Lastly, Yvette, what tips do you have for all the mompreneurs out there?
I would also add to what Ivy was saying. I agree with everything she said 100%, that you need to take it easy on yourself. But I also think that it's a time to think about what you're most passionate about, and make sure that if you're trying to enter a space, that you're entering a space and something that you wholeheartedly are passionate about it, because being an entrepreneur is too stressful. It's too stressful to take on if you're not doing something that you absolutely love, that if it doesn't bring you joy. Because if it doesn't bring you joy, when you go through the hardships, you're not going to make it through the hardships, and you're going to fail. And I also say for entrepreneurs who have a full-time job and are thinking about trying to do something that they're passionate about, or pivot, just do it. Just go for it and do it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to quit your job today, but start building the foundation, researching, building it brick by brick until you get to the point that you see it taking off, that you see it bearing fruit, that maybe you can leave that job. I think a lot of people they're unhappy with whatever they're doing, and they just want a quick fix and say, I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to do it on my own. You can do it, but you need to do it smartly so that you can prosper and so that you can have success, and just find something that you love. When we got locked down and I was home and we gave up the office and my staff went home and everybody's working from home, and I had more time at home, is when I started and got the idea to launch the soap part of my candle business, which when I was in LA, I'd always been thinking about it. I had taken some chemistry classes and whatnot, but it's not something that I ever did. And then moving here, ACA was my full-time focus, and I started doing pop-ups with the candle company, but not really delving into it because I had too much on my plate. Then all of a sudden it was the pandemic, and all of a sudden everybody needed to wash their hands, and all of a sudden people were, there was a niche or an area that I could fulfill and provide a service, and provide all natural services and that whole kind of thing. So actually being home gave me a little bit of downtime to think about that business and what else I could do with that business to grow. And the one thing I've never done was put so much pressure on myself that it had to be this big, or I had to make this much money out of it, or it had to be this success. And probably because it was my side business and my side hustle in addition to my job, I took it as it came. I loved it. I love doing it. I love creating for people. When I'm work and I'm stressed, I go to the soap shop and I just make, because it makes me happy. So whatever it is that you're going to do, make sure that you're passionate about it. Make sure that you feel good about it so that you can handle the stresses that are going to ultimately come your way.
Great. First off, I just want to say thank you. This has been absolutely informative. It has been incredible. The gems that I have picked up, and I'm sure the audience members have picked up as well, have been absolutely phenomenal. But now the audience have a bunch of questions for you because they would like to know how they can handle certain matters. So I don't know. So I know you've mentioned that your kids are homeschooled. Are you homeschooling as well?
It's what we used to do, but schools are about to open, so my kids are going back to school. Yeah.
Okay. So one of the audience members has asked, I am thinking about homeschooling my children and I own my own business. Will this be something I can do? So, but I know you already have experience in this department, and then Ivy can answer after you. I think we might have lost Lamia, but then we'll get her back just now.
I think homeschooling was the best thing that I've ever done for my children, but I do not homeschool them myself. So I ended up hiring a tutor that comes 3 times a week. 3 hours a day. Sorry. He comes every day, Monday through Friday, for 3 hours a day. And they focus strictly on academics or what other subjects that my kids have decided to take, whether it's art or coding or those kind of things. But it was not something, being an entrepreneur or working from home, something that I could take on myself. So I think if it's something that you're interested in, you just have to be realistic. What are you able to take on as a parent and also do your job? For me, it was turning it all over to someone else that at the end of the day, I can engage with and get reports from and understand and see what they're doing. But it's not something where I had capacity or really wanted to be the teacher as well. I think I just wanted to be the mom. And it turned out it turned out being a little bit less school fees for me than it was when I was sending them to school. So, and then they also, the hard thing about it is during COVID, with homeschooling, you have to make sure that that they get out, that they do sports or do other activities where they see other kids, and COVID kind of nixed that in the bud. So that was a tough year in doing that. But my kids, they do horseback riding, they do tennis. You just have to work a little bit harder to find what those activities are in the afternoon that they can actually go do and see other individuals. Otherwise, COVID has made everything isolating. So it's been a little bit tough, but yeah.
Ivy, you mentioned that your twins are quite cabin fevered out. They're tired of being in the household. So I'm sure they're more than happy the schools are reopening in Kenya. But what advice would you have in relation to the question I just asked?
The question was for an entrepreneur. Should they homeschool? Is that what you get?
She says she's thinking about homeschooling the children, but also has her own business. Is that something that can be done?
Yeah. Definitely. I agree with what Yvette said. And I would say pick your struggle. I personally know as Ivy, I cannot school my children. I tried. They were taking music classes, and I decided one day to take out the piano and be like, come kids, let's play some piano. They were banging on that thing, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. As a mom, you have to pick your struggles. You're not expected to do everything. If you're a happy mom and you're there for your children, very good. If you can afford to get a tutor like Gail did, Yvette did, please do so. But pick your struggle. You're not expected to do everything, mom. No. Yeah.
All right. Welcome back.
Hi, guys. Sorry. I don't know what happened. Everything just went frozen for a minute.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. So we're in the Q&A segment of the final bit of our hour and a half now. And a question came in about one of the audience members asking about homeschooling and running their own business. And is it something that they can do? So could you briefly give your advice on the same?
I think it's absolutely something you can do. Where homeschooling is involved, uh, um, you would have in terms of for the business side of running for the side of running your business, you will need to set targets for yourself and be realistic about the targets. Look at the sort of children you have. Are they demanding? Can they do things on their own? Depends on their age. If you can just put work in front of them and they can do it on their own. Can you schedule meetings and things around maybe after bedtime, or having the help or asking for help is another thing. I find that as women, we probably feel afraid to ask for help, but I've learned quickly not to be afraid to ask for help, because if the help is there to give, then just go for it, because it makes you productive. It makes you less agitated at your children. I've done it, setting up a business in the pandemic while homeschooling, but I would not deny or not pay acknowledgement to the support system that I have, and that has been an integral part of being able to run the business in a successful way. Probably not as quickly as I would like to, but I've also set realistic timelines for myself. And when you're starting up a small business, especially where you have to deal with maybe selling a product or going into a marketplace or going into a retailer to sell your product, you also have to be comfortable with the idea of rejection, and how that rejection can propel you further, how that projection can make you can instill some sort of humility in you to be able to learn from the process, not just feeling like, oh, I have the best product in the world. You have to be humble about it. So that's what Ivy said earlier, and that really stuck with me, because it's such an important thing that we need to be aware of, and just honing in on your strengths, whatever your weaknesses are, trying to improve them, and setting realistic timelines that work for you. You might be looking and be inspired by someone who has been in the industry for maybe 10 years, whatever industry it is, but you've not seen the struggles that they've gone through. And best believe that people would only ever put out what they feel they want people to see. Most people won't air their dirty laundry in public. They won't tell you the difficulties that they go through. But understand and know that people have difficulties. So whenever you hit a roadblock, definitely do it, and everything would fall into place. But with homeschooling, I find that you will need to be more intentional with your time and more realistic about the timelines that you set for yourself in business as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Another question that's come in is, I've been struggling with mom guilt for a while. I'm a relatively new mom. My daughter is 1, and I've been eager to go back to work, but I can't help but feel guilty. I have a loving partner who always works and supports me. What should I do? Yvette, any advice?
Go back to work. I would say we all have mom guilt. Every mom around the world, I'm sure, when it's that time for them to leave their baby and go back to work, doesn't want to, has an enormous amount of guilt. It's natural. We all feel it. But I think at some point you have to break away.
Yeah.
And if your situation is where you have to go back to work, then you go back to work and you come home and you snuggle and you kiss that baby every morning and every night. I remember with my first day back to work, I took my baby with me. I strapped him on and sat in my office, and people were like, "What are you really doing?" And I was like, I'm having separation anxiety, but I'm going to get together. And you just can't be hard on yourself. Allow yourself to feel the emotion, because it is natural, and know that nothing is wrong with you for having the guilt. We all have the guilt. Maybe if it's a situation where you can ease yourself back into it, and you have that capacity, and your employers have that capacity to let you try that. But just know you're going to be fine. You're going to get through it. You know, mom guilt, as you heard us all talk about on this call, mom guilt follows you for the rest of your life. So it's something that we have to deal with. It doesn't feel nice, but you will get through it and you will move on and you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And the little one will be okay as well.
All right. Very briefly, Fiore and Ivy.
For me, I feel like I agree with everything that Yvette has said in terms of it following you on for the rest of your life. I don't think there's ever a time when you would feel, oh yeah, you know, I can relax and you're just going to have it for the rest of your life. My mom still has it and I'm 35, you know, so I know for a fact that I'm going to have it. I think that, like I said, boundaries and setting targets for yourself and, you know, focusing on the things that are most important. You would know what's most important for your children, what they love the most, what they love to do the most, and just focusing on those things, because at the end of the day, your children will thank you for, you know, giving them an amazing education or all of the other things we're working for. But it's the little things that shape them that would help them and carry them through life. So like I've always said, I want to raise children that are kind, you know, being kind to other people and considerate of other people, and just doing whatever you feel is the best for your children. Most parents know what's best for their children, and not feeling bad about things that you can't do that are beyond your control.
Okay, great. Ivy?
Yeah, I agree with all the ladies. When I went back to work when my kids were 4 months old and my milk dried up in a matter of a week, the mom guilt that ensued was completely terrible, and I knew that I had to do something about it. So I came to realize that current employer was not going to do it for me. So I looked for employment that gave me flexible working hours, which means I was able to go back home earlier and I was able to, you know, leave home later. So it helped alleviate the mom guilt a little bit. And the other way I help alleviate mom guilt to date is I practice a lot of positive self-talk as a mom. So I'm constantly telling myself, I am a good mom. I am doing the best that I can. I am a good mom. So that really helps me sometimes when I feel like, oh man, this is just not happening today. I practice a lot of self-talk. And then finally, if you do have a good support system back home, you will help again alleviate that mom guilt. If you're in the place to have a nanny, as you said, you have a supportive husband, at least you know that you have a good support system. And that motherhood it takes a village, literally. It does. Don't put everything on your shoulders and you should be fine.
All right, so the final two questions. Yeah, I love that. So before we wrap up, so one is life is super stressful as it is. So what health and wellness tips would you give to mothers who want to become entrepreneurs or balance their careers with parenthood? Yvette?
It's interesting. I read this really great book recently. It's called The 5 a.m. Club. And I feel like it changed my life because I am someone who gives and gives and gives. And I don't take that time for myself, that mental break for me. And I read this book and I was like, wake up at 5 a.m. They must be crazy because I like to sleep late. I don't like to stay up late and I don't like to sleep late. Like somewhere I'm caught in the middle. And once I said, you know what, I'm going to try this. I started waking up at 5 a.m. Everybody in the house is asleep. The house is quiet. I can have my cup of coffee. I can sit and I can meditate. I can think about my day. Sometimes I start working, which I try not to do, but it's quiet. I could get a lot done. And I found that my days, I'm so much more positive. I can get so much more done and I'm less stressed because at the beginning of the day, I set my intention and I just tried to sit in quiet. You know, with everyone working at home and kids going to school at home and the dog and everything, it becomes overwhelming with noise and chatter all the time that I found solace and healing and emotional well-being in getting up early and stealing a little bit of time. That's just my time. Nobody can ask me to do anything. Nobody can force me to do anything. I don't have to feel guilty about not doing something. That this is a moment that is specifically for me. So I encourage it. Find that time that you can just shut everybody else out and take care of yourself. Right. And I'm going to start saying, like Ivy said, I am a good mom. I'm just going to add that to my mantra.
That's the way to go. All right. What about you, Ivy? What advice would you give?
I recently started working out, like literally like 3 weeks ago, and
I've seen it. You've been doing great.
it's completely changed the way my day starts. As Yvette said, once you set your morning right, when the house is quiet and you're doing something for you, and then you plan your day, it just completely changes how I do absolutely everything. So I am just here to mirror everything that Yvette has said. I've not read the 5 a.m. club yet, but I feel like I'm practicing 5 a.m. clubbing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and also therapy. My industry is very, Anita, you know this. Cyberbullying can really get to people.
Yeah.
And sometimes that cascades to your children, where your bad mom, da da da. So also therapy can really help.
All right, Fioye?
I think I'm in this 5 a.m. club too. But I've never heard of the book. I think I'm going to read it. I found that waking up really early, going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning for an hour, walking around the neighborhood in that time really gives me time to think about what I want my day to be like, and really, really energizes me. So I start up really early as well. I go to bed early, but I start up early as well, because I find that when I do, I'm my happiest. When I don't, I'm not. So it's just focusing on the fact that this is what works for me. To some people, it sounds crazy waking up at 5 a.m., but I think it's probably one of the best things that I get to do. And when I don't do it, I really see the difference. My diet is out the window. I'm just really catty and ratty when I don't. So it's understanding what works for me and not having any children just in your ears all day. Those 2 hours are bliss. And I just take it. I cherish it. I hold it to my chest and I'm like, yes, 2 hours for me. I'm good. I can walk on water today. So so that for me is understanding what works for you. It could be evening walks, it could be going to the gym, it could be just sitting in a place still and quiet for an hour with no interruptions. It's just what works for you. So find that thing that works for you and just stick to it.
My mother to this day, and her kids are all out of the household. It's been over 35 years, and she still wakes up every single morning at 5 a.m. And we're like, what are you literally, what are you waking up to do? She's just like, I don't know. It's a routine I've gotten into that she's, completely stuck to and not gotten out of all these many years later. I find it very fascinating. I will try that. I'm an insomniac, so the idea of waking up at 5 a.m. just sounds brutal. But then the bliss with which you have explained, each of you have an early morning makes a very big difference in how your day goes.
Yeah.
I really hope to all the audience members who are watching, and myself included, I will try it, and then we'll see how that works out.
And
so
rest
as we
as
bow
well,
out,
I find that rest is so important. I don't think as an entrepreneur, they always say, there's this narrative that goes on, especially on social media, where it's like, oh, you have to hustle if you're sleeping, you sleep when you're dead, that really, really, really negative conception of, having to work all hours of the day to be a successful entrepreneur. That's what entrepreneurship is about. No, entrepreneurship is about sleeping and being productive when you absolutely need to be. So, yeah.
All right, so the final question.
I was just going to say, you can't make good decisions when you are just
absolutely
deprived. You can't.
All right, so we're all at a different age in our lives now. And the final question is, What advice would you give your younger self when thinking about starting a business and entering into parenthood? So, very quickly, we'll each answer this, and each of us will give 3 tips. We can start with Ivy.
Get your finances in order. You already know the babies are coming. It's not a surprise. So just start getting your finances in order for their sake. In terms of starting a business, start it. Ideas are entities that move around. Someone else will have your idea and start your business before you. So run and start. Hindsight is 2020. Don't let that be you.
Yeah.
Great. I love that. All right. Fioye?
I think for me, for anyone who wants to start a business, like I said, I always say, and I would always say, is to start, do it, get your research done, take a calculated risk if you feel like I mean, just don't go leaving your job that you're working at because you have this bright idea, but, always make sure that you take calculated decisions. You think of everything, you plan everything in, especially where you know that your children are going to be in the mix. You want to give them the best, absolute best than you've actually had yourself. So I feel like having a plan is very, very important, no matter what it is, no matter how silly you think it is, just have that plan and set your deadlines and stick to it. Start your business and get a mentor, like get someone who can advise you, who can tell you, no, this is not the way to go, this is what could happen. And I feel like those are the 2 essential tips I would give for anyone wanting to start a business. Start and get a mentor.
Okay, great. So, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, my younger self. Don't worry, everything is going to work out. Like, you always think, I don't have time, or I need to do this in this time, and when you get to your 30s, you're like, okay, is this what it is about? Because when I got to my 30s, I was like, okay, this is what it is about. And having children, because people always, when I got married, on the day of the wedding, people were saying, oh, so we'll be back in 9 months, for a naming ceremony. And I'm like, okay, do things at your own pace, do things steadily, because you're the one left to carry whatever load it is you have. You would have helpers along the way, but do things steadily. Don't rush, don't worry, don't stress. You're never too old to achieve anything. I think that would have been the advice, because a lot of decisions that I've made have been like, oh God, I need to achieve that now, that needs to be done now. Where no, actually you probably need 2 or 3 more years experience, and then you'll be better at it, you'll be better for it. So yeah, take your time.
Great.
Growing
So
up is a scam.
So we're going to wrap up with you. So a few tips, 3 preferably, if that you would give your younger self, as well as advice that you would give to people who are thinking about starting a business and entering into parenthood
I
too.
give to someone who's starting a business and entering parenthood, just start them both. I think way too often people are waiting for the right time to have kids or waiting for the right time to start a business. And the right time is going to be when you start. Things are always going to come along. There are things that are going to knock you off your timeline. I think it's important that you just have to start and have a support system. Yeah. Have a few really good people to support you, a mentor as well. But try not to invite too many people into your decision-making process, because a lot of times too much noise in the kitchen makes you mess up and not be decisive in doing anything. So just be careful of that. And I would think I'd say that you're never too old to pivot and learn something new. I didn't become an entrepreneur until my 40s. It was something that growing up, I said I'd never, ever do. I never wanted to be. And lo and behold, you grow wiser. Your life experiences take you down different journeys and different pathways. So be open. Don't be so closed-minded. I think that I fought it for a very long time, but I also think that at the right moment in my career is when I made the decision to do it. So, yeah.
I can never thank you ladies enough. This has been very informative, very educative. It has been absolutely fantastic. And to all of our audience members for tuning in, thank you so much. This has been day 2 of the Amaka Our World Festival. The hashtag is Our World Festival, and you can tag at amaka.studio on all the social media platforms. Where you will get to find out more about what's happening. Yesterday was Self Care Sunday. Today's Motivational Mondays. It was sponsored by Vista Bank and Oakwood Green as well. And the conversation continues, so do stay tuned. And there will be more discussions tomorrow focusing on mental health and sexual health as well. So be sure to tune in for that. Oh, and before we go, because we have to drop the good news too, you stand a chance to win an iPad and products from Black and African owned brands. So be sure to stay tuned, stay active, ask questions, and learn everything there is to learn during the Our World Festival that's taking place now today and tomorrow. But ladies, I want to say thank you. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I appreciate all the wise words, all the advice, and all the tips that you have shared as well. And I'm sure the audience members too. So with that, I will bid you adieu and enjoy the rest of your day. And to everybody who is still tuned in, remember there's passion and purpose and entrepreneurship coming at next, so don't go anywhere. Remember, it's at amaka.studio, hashtag Our World Festival. Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you so much,
Bye.
guys.
Bye, ladies.
Bye-bye.
There's this element that you might need to perform your culture and your identity just in order to stand out.
My whole career, I've been told to speak Kiswahili, and that's what's going to make me Kenyan. Learning to speak Kiswahili in Nairobi, is pretty difficult. So I haven't really gotten to that point, but I still would. I had a disdain for it before because I was like, that's not what makes you Kenyan. But now I'm like, it's actually a beautiful language. If I could ever put Kiswahili into my music, I'd want to do it authentically, but I'm not 100% sure that that's what would make me African. So I'm still figuring that out.